Good afternoon, colleagues. This is meeting number 112 of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts for Wednesday, October 17th, 2018. We are here this afternoon in consideration of Report 5, Socioeconomic Gaps on First Nation Reserves, Indigenous Services Canada, of the 2018 spring reports of the Auditor General of Canada. We're pleased to have a number of witnesses here on that report. But before we get to that, I would also like to draw attention to in our gallery or in the public area today, we're very pleased to have a delegation from the State Financial Accountability Agency of the People's Representative Council of the Republic of Indonesia. And I think they can stand. We welcome you here again today. We were pleased to host them at a luncheon yesterday where we heard about their accountability and transparency measures in Indonesia, their committee, as well as a commission that works kind of hand in hand. So we were able to, around breaking of bread, we were able to sit at the table and learn a little bit about their system and them about us. So welcome here. We're also pleased and honored to have with us from the Office of the Auditor General of Canada today, Mr. Michael Ferguson, Auditor General of Canada, and Mr. Joe Martire, Principal. Welcome here. From the Department of Indian Affairs and Northern Development, we are probably, that's not the
Indigenous Services.
That's the legal name. That is still the legal name of the department. And so we're pleased to have with them Mr. Jean-François Tremblay, Deputy Minister, as well as Mr. Paul Thoppin, Chief Finances, Results and Delivery Officer, Indigenous Services and Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs, and Ms. Shelley LaForest, Acting Senior Director, Program Directorate, Education and Social Development Programs and Partnership Sector. So we welcome you here today, and we'll open today's meeting by turning the floor over to our Auditor General, Mr. Ferguson, please.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to discuss our Spring 2018 report on socioeconomic gaps on First Nations reserves. Joining me at the table is Joe Martire, the principal responsible for the audit. Successive governments have made numerous commitments to improve the well-being of First Nations people, and Indigenous Service Canada is the lead government department responsible for meeting most of these commitments. In this audit, we assessed Indigenous Services Canada's progress and reporting on closing socioeconomic gaps between on-reserve First Nations peoples and other Canadians. We also focused on whether the department made adequate use of data to improve education programs to close the education gap and improve socioeconomic well-being.
We found that the department's main measure of socioeconomic well-being on reserves, namely the Community Well-being Index, was not comprehensive. While the index included Statistics Canada data on education, employment, income, and housing, it omitted several aspects of well-being that are also important to First Nations people, such as health, environment, language, and culture. Mr. Chair, to close socioeconomic gaps and improve lives on reserves, federal decision makers and First Nations need information. They need information about the socioeconomic condition of First Nations people and program data that are reliable, relevant, and up to date. Indigenous Services Canada requires First Nations to provide extensive data about their on-reserve members. The department also obtains data from Statistics Canada, other federal government departments, Indigenous organizations, and other sources. However, we found that the department did not adequately use the large amount of program data provided by First Nations or other available data to measure and report on whether the lives of people on First Nation reserves were improving.
The department didn't adequately measure and report on the education gap. Using the education data collected by the department, we calculated that the gap in levels of high school graduation or the equivalent between on-reserve First Nations people and other Canadians widened between 2001 and 2016. We also found that First Nations had limited access to the department's education information system and related analysis. Since 2008, the department had spent about $64 million on developing and operating this system. The system was intended to capture and analyze First Nations education data to inform decision-making, which First Nations could access as well. Indigenous Services Canada also made poor use of the education data it collected to improve education results. For example, the department spent $42 million over 4 years to prepare First Nations students to enter post-secondary education programs. However, we found that only 8% of those enrolled actually completed this preparatory program. Despite these poor results, the department didn't work with First Nations or educational institutions to improve the success rate. Monsieur le Président, c'est avec...
Mr. Chair, complete and accurate departmental reporting informs Parliament, Canadians, and First Nations about the true extent of federal program results and whether progress is being made on closing the socioeconomic gap between First Nations and other Canadians. We found that the department did not report on most of the education results it had committed to report on over the past 18 years to determine whether progress was being made to close the gap. For example, it did not report on student attendance or on the delivery of First Nations language instruction.
Reporting of First Nations results was inaccurate. For example, the department overstated First Nations high school graduation rates by up to 29 percentage points because it didn't account for students who dropped out between grades 9 and 11. Moreover, the department's data showed that between the 2014-15 and 2015-16 fiscal years, the graduation rate was improving, but our calculation showed that it was declining. We concluded that Indigenous Services Canada didn't satisfactorily measure or report on Canada's progress in closing the socioeconomic gaps between on-reserve First Nations people and other Canadians. We also concluded that the use of data to improve education programs was inadequate. Notre rapport contient 3 recommandations visant...
Our report contains 3 recommendations aimed at improving Canada's progress and reporting on closing socioeconomic gaps between on-reserve First Nations people and other Canadians. Mr. Chair, this concludes my opening statement, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Turn to Mr. Tremblay. Mr. Tremblay, we look forward to your testimony.
Je remercie les membres du comité.
I'd like to thank the committee for the invitation to speak here today at this 112th meeting of your committee. I'd also like to acknowledge that we are meeting on traditional Algonquin territory today.
But also use the opportunity to remind people who don't know that tomorrow is the one-day fasting on the fasting day on the for the Moose Hide campaign. So for those of you who want information about this, they would be actually people walking and going to see you on Parliament Hill tomorrow. So that's a very good event that is men standing against violence against women and girls. So we'd encourage you to participate. I'm joined today by Paul Topple, Chief Finance Results and Delivery Officer, and also by Shelley Laforêt, Acting Senior Directors, Education and Social Development Programs and Partnership Sector. My colleagues and I have carefully considered the spring report on socioeconomic gaps in education data for First Nations on reserve. I would like to affirm that Indigenous Service Canada agrees with the 3 recommendations in the report that pertain to our departments. Je passerai en revue chacune.
I'd like to go through each recommendation and provide a brief update on our progress, after which I'd be pleased to take your questions. But first, let me provide some context to our response.
Relationship with Indigenous peoples. We are committed to working with partners to change funding models and create opportunities for First Nations to control First Nation matters, including education. This is not a new concept. It has long been, but it has long been ignored and not implemented appropriately. It's a fact that more than 20 years ago, then President of Saskatchewan Indian Federated College was quoted in the Royal Commission's report as saying, Aboriginal education for self-determination controlled by Aboriginal people succeeds. And that's what we're trying to do. Le gouvernement du Canada prend maintenant
The Government of Canada is now taking important policy steps in full collaboration with First Nations partners to support self-determination in First Nations education.
On recommendation regarding measuring and reporting on overall socioeconomic well-being. The first recommendation has to do with working with First Nations as well as other partners to measure and report on overall socioeconomic well-being of First Nations on reserve, as well as to look at additional aspects of socioeconomic well-being that First Nation have identified as priority, which include language and culture. I'm happy to report that we're doing exactly that. Much of this work is already underway with the Assembly of First Nation and other partners. As a first step and part of our co-development of a new fiscal relationship, we are working with the Assembly of First Nation and other key partners, such as the First Nation Information Governance Center, on a proposed national outcome-based framework, and I think a draft of this framework has been distributed to you. Grâce à ce cadre, nous espérons.
Through this framework, we hope to measure gaps in things like living standards, education, and health between First Nations and non-Indigenous people in Canada, so that we can see if we're starting to close these gaps.
The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which are very comprehensive. Taking a wide view of the kinds of outcomes we want will help us actively engage with Indigenous peoples to define measures of success that are meaningful to all parties. This means that we can more comprehensively measure progress on numerous aspects of well-being, including language and culture. In all, we aim to have co-developed baseline data on socioeconomic gaps within 3 years so that we can start to systematically measure and report on our progress. Il est essentiel de collaborer à chaque étape.
Central to this reporting will be to work together at every stage, from defining mutually meaningful indicators to integrating First Nations knowledge and perspectives into the narrative. We're committed to a respectful process and to taking the time to get it right.
Use and share data in partnership with First Nation to improve education results. I will now turn to the second recommendation, which has to do with collecting, using, and sharing data on education with First Nation partner in order to improve education results in First Nations on reserve. The department agrees with the recommendation, and we are already working hard to implement it. Indigenous Services Canada has invested in relationship with First Nation to manage education data. We are collaborating on pinpointing meaningful education results that could replace what we currently measure. We are also in a paradigm shift towards First Nation control, which means where First Nation will be the ones collecting meaningful data to report to their community, and the government will be in the loop. Nous savons que le renforcement des capacités.
We know that strengthening First Nations data governance capacity is key to this work, and that is why, as part of this new fiscal relationship, Budget 2018 committed to support the design of a national data governance strategy for First Nations.
Partners to co-develop a new K-12 education policy, which will guide the development of regional approaches and include mutual accountability and improvements in data collection, use, and sharing. In December 2017, the Assembly of First Nations ratified our joint policy work, which reflect the aims of First Nations control over First Nation education. There will never be a one-size-fits-all solution for First Nation education. This is why we are working to strengthen regional approaches. A recent and bold example is the BC Tripartite Education Agreement in British Columbia, which we see as our mile zero for this kind of collaborative regional work that is more comprehensive. En élaborant des ententes régionales.
In developing regional agreements with First Nations and other partners, we can all be on the same page for what we measure and how, and also in terms of future interpretation.
Education results should be complete and accurate. I will now turn to this recommendation, which is about the integrity and the accuracy of reporting on education result for First Nations. Indigenous services agree with this recommendation. As I mentioned, our education transformation work involves agreeing with First Nations on ways to promote complete and accurate results. In terms of reporting on graduation rates, the department was always very clear on what we were measuring or reporting on. The Auditor General does not dispute that, but did propose an alternate approach. Je conviens qu'il s'agit d'une situation complexe.
I agree that this is a complex situation, as each province measures graduation rates differently. Some do it over 4 years, over 3, and they include more years.
De plus, de nombreux élèves.
Moreover, with First Nations, some can go to a system on the reserve and some off.
Include updated result framework and consequential adjustments to the education information system or its successor, and this will be a long way towards addressing the auditor's concern. En résumé, Monsieur le Président,
In sum, Mr. Chair, my department welcomes all of the recommendations of the Auditor General, and it is well on its way to a new approach on education for First Nations that will address the concerns around data and socio-economic gaps. I'd like to thank the committee for their attention, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you to all. And we'll now move into our first round of questioning. And it's a 7-minute round, and it will be a split with Mr. Area. Mr. Area, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I would like to thank the witnesses for appearing here and making their statements. My first question would be to the Auditor General. Mr. Ferguson, you have made recommendation, you have heard the response from the department. Are you satisfied with the response?
Well, that's always difficult to say because until we actually see the changes that they are talking about, it's hard to say whether they are going to make a difference or not. I think in this report, we've seen that successive governments over the last 20 years have said they are going to make changes, and we keep coming back and seeing the same issues. So I can't disagree with anything that the department is planning on doing. I think what we need now, though, is a way of making sure that it's done and not waiting for us to come back and do another audit in another 5 years' time and find out that it hasn't been done.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, Mr. Ferguson. 20 years you keep reporting and the department comes back with the same thing, saying that they're going to improve, they're going to make changes, but there's no result to see. Do you have a chance to look at this draft national outcome-based framework reporting timeline?
No, we haven't looked at it. That was after our
Maybe
audit
later
period.
on we would like to have your inputs on that. Mr. Chair, my next question would be for Mr. Tremblay. Mr. Tremblay, in fact, when we hear Auditor General saying that the department has been receiving recommendations from the Auditor General over a period of 20 years, and the typical response is this: yes, we agree, yes, we are going to change, we are going to do it, but come back again after year, not doing it. Why do you think it is?
It's different, and I know it's for some of you it's the old record, and the department will always say that they agree with the recommendation, and you want that to be more than an act of faith. You want to see result, and you want to see changes, and I think what we have on the national outcomes, for example, we didn't wait for the result from the Auditor General report. And just to put it in context, the Community Wellbeing Index was developed in early beginning of the century, to be honest. That was the time where the HDI was really popular internationally. And you remember people were proud that Canada was scoring and ranking very high at the time. And some First Nations, including the National Chief of the day, said that Canada was not doing that well because there was a huge gap on reserve. And people in the department at the time decided to say, can we measure something that would be comparable to the HDI that will allow us to see how we perform on the First Nation side? So that's what was the community
Mr.
well-being.
Trump, actually, my thing is
Yeah.
that I've been in this committee for last 3 years. We have gone to numerous Auditor General reports, but I guess this is the first time I'm seeing a particular department Auditor General saying that, over a period of 20 years, this is happening. Is this anything unique with your department? Why this is not getting done?
It's being done. Let
Yeah.
me come back on this. On this, we have now a draft outcomes-based that is more comprehensive than the community well-being index. It's too early to know exactly what it's going to end up with, but this is a major step if we succeed to be doing that. On education, we know for years, you talked about 20 years, I will talk about 50 years if you want. The education system on reserve has been underfunded for years, and we know that. The education system on reserve has been a tool of colonization in this country since the Indian residential school, and it's a reality. We have been also responding to that with a series of long programs that were all different with different accountability structure. For the first time in this country, we have been able to engage with First Nations through a co-development approach, and in 14 months end up with a financial formula for the education system on reserve that is actually Equity Plus, which is comparable to the province in which you live, but at the same time include more to address specific needs of your community. That never has been done. So we're kind of addressing something that is essential. On the colonization side, there's been attempt in the past, but it's the first time that we're going that far, where we're going with regional agreements with First Nations, where we're going with school boards. We have 2 school boards in 2 years that we've been creating. So this, it's
Okay,
changing.
I apologize. I have got
Yeah.
limited time. I have got few more questions to
Sorry.
ask. You mentioned there has been underfunding, but let's come to the ones where a lot of money has been invested. For example, Auditor General mentions since 2008, since last 10 years, the department has spent 64 million on developing and operating the education information system and related analysis. And he says that the First Nations had limited access to it.
Yeah.
So we have invested significant amount of money here.
We have invested money in this, and for 633 different communities in the country. And we have been, the reason why we invested this money at the time was because most of the information we were getting from First Nations, it was by paper, and it was programmed. And it was coming like that, and the questions on how you collect and how you use that money, that data, was not necessarily well done. It took time to have the system in place. The system is now running. We start having discussion, and we exchange a lot of information with First Nations, but we're also going now with pilots projects where First Nation will have direct access to the data. And if you look at our stats, we've got now more than 45% of the First Nation, which is an increase of 300% of them that are now filling their forms directly on the internet. So there is a lot of progress on collecting data. It took time, but we're getting there.
But still, it's still 45% after so many years. Anyway, another thing, once again, on respect to the funding and the investment we have done, Auditor General says that $42 million has been spent over 4 years, just 4 years, to prepare First Nation students to enter post-secondary education program. But only 8% of those enrolled actually completed this preparatory program.
Yeah.
Why so? $42 million in 4 years and only 8% success rate. Why is that?
The program was not. The program is basically paying the tuition. That's what it's doing. It's not a program that says, we don't run a program in this case that says we're going to do everything to make sure that you're going to go to university. There's programs developed by university for kids to actually get through a process that they can go to university. And what we do is to pay the tuition and some of the books and some costs like that. So it was not done as a program, designed as a program to actually that we deliver ourselves to improve the result. It was to make sure that they can have access to those services that were offered by the institution. Is it enough? No. When we look at the result, I totally agree with the Auditor General. It just tells us that more needs to be done. And as you know, we are reviewing our post-secondary education programs in collaboration with First Nations. And that's one of the aspects that we need to look at. What is that gap and how come First Nations have difficulties to actually get into the university or the post-secondary education? Because if we want to close the gap, all the stats are showing us that the more they get a diploma, high diploma, the closer the gap is. So that's where we need to go.
Thank you, Mr. Tremblay. We'll now move to Madam McLeod, please, for 7 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our presenters today. I'm going to start with the Auditor General and focus on the education component. I think successive governments have realized that we have some real problems, and I know that we tried to have a sort of pan-Canadian First Nations Education Act, which would build in some of these measurements that you talked about missing. Obviously, there was challenges in terms of moving that piece of legislation forward. We now have independent, sort of the Anishinaabeg Education Act. We have in British Columbia the First Nations group in British Columbia. In the sort of micro analysis of the work that you were doing, were you seeing any success with these groups that had taken over control of their education? Was that any component of the work that you did?
We didn't analyze the data on the basis of comparative of one First Nation or one model to another. That wasn't the basis of how we did our analysis.
Would it also be accurate as the government moves from a model of independent and transfers the money directly to whether it's the Anishinaabeg education? Does that have a different reporting system, and will we lose our opportunity to really understand what's going on? As I understand it, that creates a transfer arrangement that now is not under the Auditor General's purview. Is that accurate?
Well, I haven't looked at that to know for sure, but I think what's important is that, whatever model is used, that there is good reporting, public reporting on what the outputs and what the outcomes of that are. That doesn't necessarily have to be a contribution agreement type of arrangement and reporting, but there should be ways of knowing whether these different models are actually achieving better graduation rates, more First Nation students going on to post-secondary education, those actual measures. That's the type of information that needs to be known. I can't tell you what the best model is to use, and in fact there may not be one model that can be used for all of the First Nations. Some are very rural, some are urban, some are larger, some are smaller, so there may need to be different models. But at the end of the day, what's important is knowing whether the results are coming to a point where they are closer to what the rest of the Canadian population is achieving.
So under your office, do you have the opportunity to review what's happening under the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act and ensure that different information is coming into that branch appropriately?
We have different ways of looking at different organizations. Sometimes in agreements, departments will build into the agreement that there's a right for an audit to be done, perhaps an audit by the department, an audit by the Office of the Auditor General. In terms of the British Columbia Health Authority, for example, we have the ability to look at that. So, some of these things, our ability to look at them can be built either into legislation or into agreements.
So I'll go to Mr. Tremblay. Within all the self-governing agreements around education, is there ability to still analyze what's happening and share information, or is that ability gone?
Each self-government is a specific negotiation. Would be hard for me to know, to be honest. We can check, but I would be.
So it's quite potential
Yeah.
that we are doing these agreements and we're not going to have any
Yeah.
ability or opportunity to analyze, are we actually doing a
Yes.
better job through these agreements?
Yes, but my department doesn't negotiate per se self-government agreements. So
Yeah.
that
No, I recognize that, but we do fund,
Yes.
and we fund through a different model.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is, are we losing our ability to
Yeah.
understand the impacts?
Yeah, I mean, I get your point on this, and it's a very good question. Data tend to show us that Atlantic and BC are doing a bit better, and they are actually, as you know, managed regionally by First Nations on education, for example. The Mi'kmaq has a self-government agreement on education, and there's more involvement and engagement. We have a tripartite agreement, as you mentioned, with BC. We tend to find that also that we had at a certain point, as you know, we had a regional office in BC on health, and has been transferred to First Nation health authorities. And I don't have any indication that they're not better than we were doing, actually.
So there is potential, though, that, for us to say, okay, things are better as a result of what's happening. We'll be losing our opportunity to even understand if things are better with different and new models.
For us, what is important, and it's to keep, I do continue to have a lot of relationship and engagement with the First Nation health authorities. It doesn't stop because they have created the First Nation health authorities. We're meeting on a regular basis. They're meeting also with other departments, and actually not just mine. And they're very active in terms of advancing their files and exchanging with us. We find that actually what happened with those organizations is they become a more predominant partner with provinces.
Okay, great.
Which
Thank
is
you.
actually very positive because provinces are more the expert in those domains than anybody else.
So you were criticized for over data collection, and certainly I think that's a criticism that we hear often, and especially collecting data that's not being needed. Can you tell us to what degree this report came out a while ago, so what have you taken off the list of things that people need to report to you every year from when this report came out to now? Have you removed requirements in communities that they could, if I went to a community, they would say, oh my goodness, it's more manageable, it's made a difference? What have you removed?
This report doesn't ask us necessarily to remove.
Well, it says you're requiring way
yeah.
too much data, you're not using the data.
What we're doing at the moment, as I mentioned, is we're negotiating regional agreements. After having negotiated the funding formula, we're negotiating regional agreements where we agree with the First Nations on what is the structure and what would be the data that would be collected. And we will reform that, yeah.
Thank you.
right.
I usually let the guests finish their statement, but I never go back to another question when we're over time. Mr. Christofferson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Before I get down to the specifics of the actual report, I have a few comments to make, and they begin with the status report from the Auditor General of 2011. Sheila Fraser, Matters of Special Importance, in a report to Parliament. And Madame Fraser, at the time, said, under a subheading, Conditions on First Nations Reserves, between 2001 and spring 2010, my reports included 16 chapters addressing First Nations and Inuit issues directly. Another 15 chapters dealt with issues of importance to Aboriginal people. I am profoundly disappointed to note in Chapter 4 of this status report that despite federal action in response to our recommendations over the years, a disproportionate number of First Nations people still lack the most basic services that other Canadians take for granted. It is clear that living conditions are poorer on First Nations reserves than anywhere else in Canada. In a country as rich as Canada, this disparity is unacceptable. That's from Mr. Ferguson's immediate predecessor in 2011. Mr. Ferguson, in a message to Parliament, November 29th, 2016. And he had this to say at that time, under the subheading, Lack of Progress. In just 5 years, with some 100 performance audits and special examinations behind me since I began my mandate, the results of some audits seem to be, in the immortal words of Yogi Berra, deja vu all over again. Another picture that reappears too frequently is the disparity in the treatment of Canada's Indigenous peoples. My predecessor, Sheila Fraser, near the end of her mandate, summed up her impression of 10 years of audits and related recommendations on First Nations issues with the words unacceptable. Since my arrival, we have continued to audit these issues and to present at least one report per year on areas that have an impact on First Nations, including emergency management, policing services on reserves, access to health services, and most recently correctional services for Aboriginal offenders. When you add the results of these audits to those that we reported in the past, I can only describe the situation as it exists now as beyond unacceptable. Then we roll in here today with the latest report, and the audit objective is very simple. The objective of this audit was to determine whether Indigenous Services Canada satisfactorily measured and reported on Canada's overall progress in closing the socioeconomic gaps between on-reserve First Nations people and other Canadians, and whether the department adequately used appropriate data to improve education programs to close the education gap. Conclusion: we concluded that Indigenous Services Canada did not satisfactorily measure or report on Canada's progress in closing the socioeconomic gaps between on-reserve First Nations people and other Canadians. We also concluded that the department's use of the data to improve education programs was inadequate. When is it going to change? With the greatest of respect, I believe you are very sincere, Deputy, but I've been here going on 15 years, and I have heard more deputies from that department come in here and make all kinds of promises and then break them. So why on earth should we believe you today as opposed to all your predecessors who came in and made equally lofty promises? I'm glad you think that's funny.
No, I'm not thinking it's funny, but I just wonder if I can answer the question.
You now have the floor.
The floor is yours, Mr. Tremblay.
I don't ask you to believe me. Continue to track us and continue to look at the result. Do your work as you've been doing it, and I will be doing mine as I've been doing it since I arrived in that department. I'm really committed to do that, and I will take all the energy that I have to make it happen, that's for sure. That's the only thing I can tell you. And judge the result that we're already having. As I mentioned, the community well-being index was not bad at the time. It was something that was done to respond to questions at the time. What we need is a more comprehensive index. We're working with First Nations and we're developing it. And that's what we're doing. And Paul has been negotiating this over the last years, and it's actually moving in the right directions. I just hope that it's going to continue, and we will keep the momentum on this one. On education, as I mentioned to you, we now have, and you mentioned the underfunding. We've got an agreement with First Nations on the size of the envelope, on the funding formula. We have now something that is equity with First Nation, with off reserve, as well as dollars for language and culture, and more for actually for kindergarten 4 and 5. So this is actually a progress. Now we need to move to having regional discussions. If we want to exchange data with First Nations, if we want to work on improving things, we need to make it meaningful. It has to be done at a level where they will be having the capacity to actually change the system by themselves, and that's where we're going.
All right, thank you. I have to tell you, I'm still not overly impressed. In fact, I was a little underwhelmed. I didn't get a sense of urgency from your remarks. You kind of rolled in here like it was a regular report. Look, I'll give you an example. And then next round, I'll get into some specifics. But I was just so furious when I read this report. In the context of previous reports, you would have thought the department would be a lot more sensitive to the hot water they're in with this committee. I happened to be reading page 12. I assure you, I wasn't flipping through trying to find a theory. 14 occasions on one page, it said, did not have the data, did not collect, did not access, still unable, department did not distinguish, did not collect, in our view, did not distinguish, did not adequately use, could not have used, but was not, did not analyze, did not assess, did not adequately, did not report, did not. You did not do the job, and so far, I haven't heard a damn thing that tells me anything's going to be any different.
Thank you, Mr. Christofferson. And just to underscore what he's saying, you know, when we see a number of big issues. First of all, data is an issue, as Ms. McLeod said, in many different departments. The department did not collect the necessary, important, and complete data. The department did not adequately use the data. That is one big issue that other departments have. But we also know that the government has talked extensively about improving the relationship with the First Nation community, and yet the Auditor General says here, paragraph 518, meaning that the Auditor General has failed to, and I quote, meaningfully engage with First Nations to satisfactory measure and report on whether the lives of people on First Nations reserves were improving. So those are big deals. The data is the big deal, but also their life and how is their quality of life improving. And then when we go to the action plan, I see expected final date of completion. Well, by June 2021, we're going to have one part done. By June 2022, another part done. And typically, the expected final completion date, 2022 to 2023. So be certain of this. There are other timelines that are mentioned in the action plan. This committee is going to be following it up very, very carefully. And, we want to see marked improvement on some of these. But it's not just the data collection, it's also the measurable improvement of some of the measurements right there on First Nation territory. Monsieur Massé, vous avez 7 minutes.
You have 7 minutes. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to continue in the same vein as our Chair mentioned, and Mr. Christofferson as well. He started his question on a topic. And for us, on this side, we have serious concerns about the results of this audit and about previous results as well. So my first question, Mr. Ferguson, is for you. With all your experience and expertise and the various audits you've done in recent years, how can we explain such results? Aside from the difficulty in collecting data and measuring the correct indicators, how can we explain such results in this result and in previous reports that you consulted when you did your report? In general, it's something we've discussed in the past. We try to focus on results. In this particular case, we want to focus on how we can improve the lives of Indigenous peoples. Often, well, of course, I understand this is a very complex file. For many First Nations peoples, they have different needs, and I understand this is very complex. But I think it's important to focus on how we can improve outcomes for people. In the past, the focus was on a few programs or on sums of money that were given to some programs. But this is why we've examined this type of data. Can we understand how the situation could be improved? That's important. We need this type of information because there is a lack of focus on results for people that we have this type of problem. Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Well, along the same lines, I understand we have to focus our actions on results, but in your report, in the section 5.4, paragraph 199, ISC overstated by 29 percentage points the graduation levels for post-secondary studies for First Nations. So how can we have such a result when we can't first collect the correct data, and when we can't achieve outcomes that are even accurate. How can this be? How can you determine that results were inaccurate in this particular case? It's because we looked at the data from in a different way.
So what the department was measuring was essentially if a student starts grade 12, does that student graduate from grade 12? What we said was to really understand a graduation rate, you need to look at students that start, I believe it's grade 9, to see whether they go all the way through to grade 12 in sort of that 4-year time period. Because what happens is many students drop out in grade 9, 10, or 11. So it's not sufficient just to measure who starts grade 11 or grade 12 and did they graduate grade 12, because that doesn't capture all of the students that have dropped out between grade 9 and grade 11. And that's a very important component to understand. And in this case, when you only look at grade 12, 1 out of 2 students was completing. When you start at grade 9, it was only 1 out of 4 students was completing. So we don't have any complaint with the analysis that the department did. We just felt it didn't provide a fulsome enough picture to really understand whether students were being successful once they got into high school.
Monsieur Tremblay, j'aimerais vous donner l'opportunité de...
Mr. Tremblay, I'd like you to have a chance to address these concerns. First, in general, about the message that you received from the members here. Our government, obviously, would like to make sure that our First Nations in all communities can have the opportunity for development in various means. We want to be able to support them. And your department is a key component of the well-being of First Nations in Canada. So given the fundamental issues that were mentioned in this report, how can your department make sure right now that it's going to adopt a new approach to quickly achieve concrete results for First Nations communities? The Auditor General mentioned focused on results. And before, the focus was on programs. And they wanted to make sure the programs were being respected. In education, there was a large series of programs. Sometimes they were over 2 years. Sometimes they were annual programs, sometimes 5-year programs. And often they were underfunded. So now for us, we want to change the lens and stop telling programs what they have to do and just tell them give them the funding, and the Indigenous partners can find solutions. They have to find their own solutions. That's what we're seeing is being done elsewhere. People have to become aware and also take control of the tools to solve their own problems. I'm happy to hear you say that because this is a new recommendation from the Auditor General, and it's an important component. We have to make sure that the analysis that you do and your action plans that you implement are communicated to for the First Nations involved. I don't have a lot of time left, but can you explain what you're going to do concretely to do this? As I said earlier, we're making sure that there's a funding model in place. We want to group all the programs in this funding formula. There are many programs. And now we're negotiating with Indigenous peoples, and we're asking them to organize these programs for their own education. Thank you, Mr. Tremblay. Mr. Massé.
5 minutes. We're in the second round now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Tremblay. I'm going to start with some of the words of the Auditor General, which I actually think are not very profound in the private sector, but when it comes to government, I have found this to be more and more true. And in his opening statement to the spring report, the Auditor General highlighted that I'll use his exact words, the measure of success has become the amount of money spent rather than the improved outcomes for Indigenous people. And I think we can take that and we can apply it across government as a whole, quite frankly. And it's not one government, it's many successive governments that have done this more and more. I recognize that your job, I was going to ask you the question, what is your job as you come here today? Because I get the feeling that your job as you come here today is to say to committee, don't worry, we're working on it and we're going to get through this. And, the next time we come back, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure the results are better. And I would hope that your job coming to committee today is actually to say there's some really hard issues to work through. And some of the answers we don't have. But we're going to collect the data so we can get the information to come up with the answers and solutions down the road, because it's still not being done. And as I look through this report and I look through quite frankly, the entire education piece, I have found very, very frustrating. I have my own, and I'll speak to you offline about this, but I have my own experiences with trying to help some local reserves with education items. But when I look at the funding formulas, and I have a question for the Auditor General here. So if we look at the funding of education, are you able to audit each and every dollar that's spent in comparison to the results that are coming out? I know you're being fed results, but are we able to actually go through every dollar after we transfer from the Government of Canada?
Certainly all of those dollars are reflected in the financial statements of the Government of Canada. We would be able to compare them to any agreements that were in place with the recipients, and then we would be able to go through those to determine whether the recipients met their side of those agreements. So we would have a certain ability to audit them. It might be different in different cases, but I would say in general, yes, we can get to, because of the way things are structured, we can get to what money was distributed to whom, what was it for, what were they supposed to do with it, and is there some record that they did that with it?
Okay. And Mr. Tremblay, are you seeing, in terms of education, it seems to be a very broad, comprehensive issue. I mean, it's stunning that we would only look at grade 12 and determine whether, but let's move past that. Are the necessary utensils there for our young people to be successful in the education systems that are set up on reserve? I mean, are we dealing with everything from not having the right tools to be able to complete their education right through to the not having the right system in place? Or is it specifically related to the system itself?
We would not have the result that we have if the system was good, let's be honest. So there's clearly issues. There's issues that are beyond, you mentioned grade 9 versus grade 12. We could start with when the kids were born, when the baby were born. We're losing people from the day that pregnancy start in some cases. So we have to take all those factors into account. I'm not in a not worry department. I'm in a department that is dealing with big issues. And I'm not telling you that we'll keep going and everything is good. So to answer your questions on this, there's clearly not all the tools in place. And that's why we think, sorry, go ahead.
But there's underlying poverty issues, and when you're outside of reserves or in the general population, the underlying poverty issues have a humongous effect on the outcomes related to dropout statistics and to success into post-secondary education.
Yes.
So are we dealing, when we're looking at this issue, are there programs in place to give the very bare minimum for our young people on reserves to be able to actually achieve and get through, or is it, are we providing those utensils, or is it just to the system as a whole?
Yeah, you mentioned the measure about money. Money is part of the equation, but it's not the only one. you need more capacity. There's places where services are not there, the capacity is not there. And as you mentioned, it's not just education system. You can have a good education system, but if you have kids that are a community that is in crisis, you may not get great results. So there's other factors that we need to work on. It's a comprehensive approach. It's not just about the education per se. But I would not say that we have a system in place that is working well at the moment. We've got places, and you know, the Auditor General mentioned it. It's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all approach. It's not necessarily the same solution. We've got places where things are going better, but there's places where it's not going well. That's for sure. But there's housing that is attached to this too. There's other factors, violence that is attached to this. There's many factors that plays on the success or not of kids. Sorry.
Mr. Tremblay, we're out of time. Mr. Chen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to start off by also acknowledging that we are on the traditional Algonquin territory. I'm a big believer that education is an incredible social equalizer, and we've talked quite a bit about that today. And I do believe that it is an important topic for us to talk about on the path to reconciliation. In examining the achievement gap, graduation rates were compared between on-reserve First Nation students and, quote, those of other Canadian students. Does the data on other Canadian students include Indigenous students who are not living on reserves?
It would include all Canadians leaving off reserve. In our case, one thing that it doesn't include, and that's an issue, which in some places, if I have, for example, if I'm coming from a town and I'm moving to another town, I'm going from one school to another school, but there's a code that follows me. If I'm a First Nations on reserve in the First Nations system, and I go to Toronto and I go to a public school in Toronto, we may lose them. So they won't because they go in a provincial system. So there's an issue in our case that some of the drop out, and I don't know how many of them, to be honest, and I'm not saying that to say the stats are necessarily better, but we're missing some individuals in our case.
So
but when we talk about off-reserve, it's the off-reserve population in general.
So in looking at other Canadian students, you are including Indigenous students that quite possibly might have moved from on-reserve to off-reserve. And to me, it's very important that we drill deeper into the data. So coming from 9 years where I served on the Toronto District School Board, I know that there are key groups in the public education system that routinely are pushed out of school, and that includes both the Black student population and the Indigenous student population. So when we make that comparison, and of course we've talked quite a bit about comparing the same data as opposed to different ways in which you calculate graduation rate, you need to parse out the fact that there are Indigenous and Black students that historically and continue to disproportionately be pushed out or drop out of school. To me, it's very important because that would result in a picture that clearly tells you that there is an extremely disproportionate achievement gap between Indigenous students and those who are non-Indigenous across the country. I note that in the Toronto District School Board, there were specialized programs and alternative schools created specifically for Indigenous as well as Black students. One is the Afrocentric Alternative School, and the other is the First Nation schools. And to me, the concept of reconciliation is not only about ensuring that Indigenous students on reserves are given the educational opportunities they need to succeed. It is looking at a whole, the country, and how we deliver education. Are we inclusive? Are we incorporating the lived experience, histories, and cultures of different diverse communities? And only then, with that understanding of Indigenous knowledge and experiences among the general public, can we as a country truly move towards reconciliation with the Indigenous peoples. I also want to follow up in terms of gender analysis. The data that you look at, have you considered, for example, in education, how girls versus boys might be performing, and whether that information has been looked at?
I don't have the data in front of us, but as not being a surprise for you, the girls are outperforming the boys. I don't remember by how much, but the data that I have seen in the past tend to show that girls are doing better.
You have a plan in front of us. I note that in Wave 3 for 2019 to 2020, you're looking at co-development with First Nations governments in areas like education. Can you talk a bit more about what that looks like and how that will lead to self-determination and enabling Indigenous communities to create the types of educational environments that will lead to success?
As I mentioned before, the governments have tried in the past to do devolution. It was done in the 70s and the 80s. Most of the time, what we did at the time was to transfer programs as they were, with not necessarily the appropriate level of funding and at the community level. What we're trying to do now is more to have a discussion at the aggregate level on how exactly you will plan for this, and having a discussion about also the accountability structure. The model we have, it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all, but one model that we have that is being developed now is the one in BC. It allows for a better understanding, a better capacity to actually analyze the data, create new data, and actually create programs and change the programs. That's what we would like to see in the future. So that's what we're doing now. And, you know, it was mentioned before, success is not measured by funding, but you need to be able to remove the funding issue from the equation that you can focus on the rest. And I think that's where we are now. We're in a situation where we can say we are addressing the funding issue. So now it's an issue about how you organize the service and how do you do and what do you do. And that's the discussion we have, and it's a very different discussion than the one I've been in the past.
With respect to the data, if I can just add that it's very important to track a student as they move through the system.
Yeah.
There are students, as the Auditor General has pointed out, who might be pushed out or drop out of school in grade 9, 10, or 11. There are also students who might not graduate in grade 12, but might do an extra year or an extra 2 years and graduate.
Yes.
They need to be tracked. There are students who might leave an on-reserve educational institution and complete their education elsewhere.
You're a minute and a half over.
Those are some considerations I would throw out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chen. Such good comments. That's why I didn't want to cut you off. We'll go to Ms. McLeod, please.
Thank you, Chair. And, you know, certainly the Community Wellbeing Index, although it was not a tool that was finesse, it certainly gave, I remember using that tool, and it was giving you some very crude results, but they were very, you recognize that there were some real issues from those crude results. So I think, you know, the fact that that instrument is going to be replaced through a co-development of another instrument is a positive thing, and it's a good thing. Although that the CWB did have some value at the time to point out some huge discrepancies, but I'm much more concerned in terms of your findings in the education area. And so the next place I want to dive into is, tell me, the $42 million, this is a preparatory program for the entry into post-secondary. What was the name of that program? Was it equally dispersed across the country? I mean, an 8% rate of people then actually entering. Can you give me some details there, please?
So, yes, I'll start, and then I'll ask Mr. Martyr to fill in some of the details. And I think the deputy explained as well that it was funding provided to the educational institutions to provide this type of preparatory program. Our concern was only 8%.
Sorry, can I just cut in for a second? It was provided to the post-secondary institutions or the
Just to clarify,
First Nations institutions?
It was to the students. We're paying for the students' tuition and cost to go to university. That's what it's done.
But the program, the preparatory program itself was delivered by the university.
Yes. But we pay the students who go to the preparatory program. We don't manage a program.
Okay. Continue if you.
Okay.
Sorry.
So what we identified was only 8% of the students that entered into those preparatory programs completed them, okay? It would be a whole different question of how many of those 8% that were able to complete them actually went on and completed post-secondary education, right? So only 8% of the students that started the program actually qualified to get into the post-secondary program, and then I don't know how many of them would have completed it. I'll ask Mr. Martyr if there's any other details to add. Yep.
Administered by the the different bands, or was this administered by the department?
Or where are you, Madam McLeod, where are you, which question? Who do you want to answer that question?
Well, Mr. Tremblay,
Maybe
perhaps you know
repeat
who
it, maybe just
administrated-
repeat the question one more time.
So who administrated the program? Was it through transfers to the organizations and they made decisions? Or was this direct government to student?
I would ask Madame Laforêt just to go into the technicality of how the money was flowing. but
And
it was for the
please, because
students.
I do
Yep.
want to get to
It's
Mr.
through
Mateer.
First Nation funding the student.
First, so it was money that was transferred to the
Yes,
First Nations. Okay, Mr. Martyr?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This issue actually shows up in two places in our report. The first place is that we use it as an example to show how data that is available within the department. So keep in mind, this is data that we received when we mined the department's education system. And so how it could have been used, but it wasn't used to improve program results. So that's under the heading of paragraph 62 in terms of inadequate use of data. So what we pointed out was that the department had this information, and despite these poor results consistently over a 4-year period, we didn't see any evidence that there was any discussion to actually improve the outcome. The other area where it comes up is in terms of how information is reported, and that's in paragraph 97. And there we see where the department in fiscal year 2011-2012, they reported that 1,017 of these students were in transition to university. What it really was that's how many students actually received the funds. There wasn't 1,000 students that weren't going into university. So yes, over 4,000 over that 4-year period had received funds to support them to prepare for going to post-secondary, but a very small percentage, about 8%, actually went. And over that period, although the department had the data, we didn't see any evidence that there was any attempt to make improvements or find out, what was going on.
And that
then
was
the-
not a feedback loop to
That's
the
right.
communities that it
And
actually.
then in the 1 year, we looked at how the results were being reported. They reported that all 1,000 were actually going to university, where in fact, the 1,000 was how many people received funding.
Thank you. We can come back to you. Now we'll go to Madam Yip, please. You have 5 minutes, Jean.
It's been mentioned, this is a question for Mr. Tremblay. It's mentioned in the education results that in the past 18 years that there was not a report on student attendance. I think attendance is very important. It's usually the first indication of student problems. I love it when I get those calls from the school from my own kids. Usually gives me a chance to grill them. So is that being changed?
We are working with First Nations on what are the right indicators to use and that are meaningful. There has been some resistance to attendance. I'm like you. My mother got a lot of calls in the past, and so I tend to think that it's an important one. But I don't want to presume what would be the indicators, because we're not necessarily just thinking about what we will use as indicators. We want to do it with First Nation partners, so it's a discussion we have with them on what they think and what should be the common indicators and the set of indicators that are meaningful and really tracked result. So that's something, and that's one that is actually taking into consideration, but I don't want to presume what would be the conclusions of our discussion with our partners before we conclude, but I take your point.
Why are they resisting?
They don't see I don't want to speak for them on this, but what I've been hearing sometime, it's just that it's not for them necessarily the best indicators. And so I don't know if Sheila, you've got some more information on this, but.
If I can just, there's the discussion that has occurred so far is about whether it's the attendance or more, as we were speaking about, tracking the students. So is it about attendance or is it more about retention? So I believe it's a difference of opinion whether or not the indicators around retention and following student tracking versus attendance, which one provides a better measure. So that's certainly comments we've received, but there's certainly other consideration that will come into play, but that's certainly one that I've heard.
Well, what other unique unique needs of First Nations students are being tracked or being assessed in your discussions with the First Nations that's specific to their community?
Well, if you look at, I can speak to the BC agreement because it's a signed agreement. If you look at the agreement, there you'll find indicators around connectivity, around literacy by grade. They have attendance rate in their framework. They have the ratio around teacher-student. So if you look at the BC agreement, there's a list of indicators. I'm going by memory, but those would be example for the BC context that they have decided are appropriate measure to demonstrate results from a BC perspective as an example.
And it doesn't mean that it's the only indicator they would use. It's the one they agreed to necessarily include in the agreement, but my experience with FNHA would be that they will actually also develop their own indicators after.
There are many, if you look at the agreement, there are many other indicators. I've given them as an example. There are many variation of indicators, both reported to communities, reported to us, reported as well by the provinces to First Nations. So it's a comprehensive framework that you'll find in the agreement with several indicators reported at different level to the different players in the education system.
Yeah, very good questions, Ms. Yip. I think, you know, is there a problem of these indicators, you know, when we work together with them to develop, you know, which indicators we use, that, you know, the indicators are the true indicators that we need to get the answers? I think that's the question. Did the Auditor General, has he given any idea of which indicators should be there on those issues of, like, for example, school attendance and others?
I don't see it yet, or at the moment I don't see it as a problem. We have those discussions. You know, people 14 months ago would have said that we could not agree on a funding formula, and we're kind of progressing quite a lot on this. We will see what's going to come out of those discussions. But I think it's our experience, and our first experience at this stage on this, is that it's easier to agree on indicators when we have a regional discussion.
So when will we know the
Sorry.
indicators? There are some shorter timelines here, and back to Ms. Yip's question. I mean, you know, some of the long-term expected completion dates are 21 to 23, but you have some short-term.
Yeah.
First regional education agreement finalized by this December 2018, inclusive of results-based management approaches tailored to support local priorities, anticipated to be completed by December 2018. Are we on schedule for that?
Yeah.
Yes, with certainty?
Are you with
It's the
certainty?
agreement that was signed in British Columbia.
It's already
That's the one that's done. Okay. Oh, it's been there for years?
No, we just signed a renewal.
Okay, a renewal.
It was quite a renewal because you had to adapt the new.
So
formula.
are these timelines, like, you've given us some short-term timelines that say we're going to accomplish this by December 2018, but you've just signed, you know, the renewal. Is it a real hard and fast timeline that's we're going to be able to measure, you know, we're going to be able to actually measure that you're completing these, or are these kind of a fait accompli even long before you've given us this date?
No, they're not long fait accompli. I mean, we've been negotiating the TIFA in BC intensively during all summer, so it was not necessarily a fait accompli. We just announced it, a month ago, not even so. So it was a renewal because it's the place where we started those things, but there is actually other discussions going on in other regions, and I'm confident that we will make progress. As I said before, we also created two school board in 2 years, basically, which is actually quite good.
Thank you. Mr. Christofferson.
Thanks, Chair. And I want to thank you for shoring up the message, the important macro message that we had. I appreciate that. And I think you're also anticipating where I may be going when you suggested that we're going to be keeping this one on a short leash. And I would think any of these reports, given the context that we've got, that we should be, and let the department know that we'll take you up on your offer. Follow us, measure us, we will. And we got great staff. Nothing gets by them. So a straight up question, page 7. 5.31. In 2000, this is the Auditor General report. In 2000, Indigenous Services Canada committed to measuring and reporting on the education gap every 2 years. As of December 2017, we found that the department had not met this commitment. Pourquoi?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I know what I control. I don't know why it was decided not to report. There has been, data was not available, quality of data, maybe. I think we've made progress in terms of exchange of information and data. But you know, my sense is, as I mentioned before, developing national indicators is one thing. If you really want to be meaningful in your co-development process with First Nations, ideally you would go at the regional level. That's where we think we're going to get success. And for us, that's where it's going to go. So national will come from that. But I think in the past we took potentially too much a top-down approach, which is this is what we think it is. And we ask First Nation communities, as you said before, underfunded without necessarily the capacity to send the information. We set them up sometime for not necessarily success.
Thank you. I do appreciate your frankness, but it still leaves us a question, though. And I heard your answer, but this is not, you know, I don't see a lot of nuance in any answer here. Your department made a commitment to do something, to give reports, important reports on an important matter. You didn't do it, and you talk about it like it's the distant past.
No.
The reference point is December 2016, so that means that whoever was there in 2016 also ignored it, because that's what it looks like. This is what really troubles us. It's a complex file. You've got a difficult job. Nobody will question that, and I don't envy you your job. But when it's things like this obvious, you make a promise. It's a simple one. Every 2 years, we'll report this. 7 years go by, the department doesn't even bother. And so when people wonder why Romeo Saginaw did what he did in the House of Commons, it's things like this. Because this is just, yeah, we'll do it, don't worry, get through the moment. One and done, we call it. So what it looks like, and I know it's not true, but what it looks like is a lack of compassion or caring. It wasn't really a question. It was more of a rhetorical question. I do want to, because I'm trying to get...
You don't question my caring and compassion. Sorry.
Sorry?
I hope you don't question my compassion.
No, your sincerity. I'm just telling you, though, I've had lots of Tremblays sit here and give me the same promises. That's all. I haven't heard you say anything new I haven't heard before. Okay. That's all. I believe you're sincere. I believe they were sincere. But I also know our First Nations people are still getting the dirty end of the stick in this country, and we collectively as Parliament are not doing enough. And so when we drill down to the points, this is where the rubber hits the road, sir.
Yep, fair enough.
Page 6, I'm probably rapidly running out of time. Page 6, 5.29, limited use of available data. Before I get to the detailed question, which I may not get to because the chair's going to give me the hook, I've only got 5 minutes. My question is this. Are you aware, as a deputy, that the Auditor General and this committee made the issue of data one of the most important macro issues for us, this Parliament? Did you know that?
Yes, I know. You remind me that last time I was here, actually.
So why then didn't you treat the issue of data more seriously? I mean, it's not like we're playing gotcha.
Yeah.
We told you 3 years ago, this is an important issue to us. The Auditor General has said this is one of the key issues. But I don't see any sense of urgency, sir. I don't see any sense of, we know this is important to you, and those answers. That's why I made the reference to your opening remarks. Sounded very business as usual. That didn't help my attitude towards the business today.
Sorry for being too bureaucratic maybe in my remarks, but it is a priority for us. And that's why Paul is dedicating a lot of time working with First Nation on this national index. That's why we're working on developing those accountability framework. It is capital for us, but not just for us as a government. What we are aiming to is not us having more data. It's First Nation leaders and ones who work in the First Nation education system to have the tools that they need, which means the data, to actually make the right decision. This is not Ottawa-centric. It has to be with the ones who manage the system.
I'm out of time, but I'd like to hear what Ferguson thinks about that.
All right, well, we'll go to Mr. I'll come back to Madam Mendez. We're giving a little extra time to Mr. Christofferson because he's been so calm, cool, and collected today. Mr. Ferguson.
Not going to smoke.
That one you could have.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, you know, the issue of data and needing the right data is important. And I guess what I want to do is I want to bring this back up to, you know, we used education as an example, but what we are talking about here is data to be able to analyze the socioeconomic gap between Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people in Canada. So, yeah, I don't want to turn this into an exercise of collecting data for the sake of collecting data. The issue about data that is important is identify what data matters, make sure you collect it, and make sure you collect it well so that it doesn't have errors in it. You need the right data, and it needs to be of the right quality, but that data needs to be leading to something. And in this case, it needs to be about, is the socioeconomic gap between Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people closing or not? And this one is more complicated, you know, because we talk about a nation-to-nation relationship, but quite frankly, I see it as a many nations-to-nation relationship, right? Because there are many nations when you're dealing with the First Nations, and they don't necessarily all have the same priorities. So that complicates the department's job in identifying what types of data matters to individual First Nations or groups. But what we see too often is either data that's collected and isn't used, data that is collected poorly so that it can't be used, or data that isn't collected when it should be collected. And they need to have a very good framework for what is it we're trying to do. We're trying to close socioeconomic gaps. How do we measure what is the socioeconomic gap? What data do we need to do that? Is that data of sufficient quality that we can rely on it, and how is it being reported? It's a simple model, but it is complex in the implementation.
Thank you both. Madam Mendez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'll start with you, Mr. Ferguson, and then I'd like to hear Mr. Tremblay on some of the issues. But we're talking about, and you just mentioned it, so it's actually a wonderful segue into what I'd like to talk about. This is about nation to nations, plural. This is clearly not something that is done with one group and the federal government in one group, or even the federal government in one province. This is with a multitude of interlocutors that need to be brought into the table as full partners in this negotiation, if I understand this correctly. But once the agreements happen, okay, and you have the BC as an example, once it happens, where do we go with the accountability? Because my understanding is that once you have a nation-to-nation agreement, like you have with the provinces, the federal government stops having any accountability expectations. Except, you know, for example, the Canada Health Act, you know, you expect the provinces to respect the framework of the Canada Health Act, but you're not asking them to show you, the federal government, how exactly each dollar of the health transfer is spent. They decide how they do it. Same thing with education or whatever other pan-national program. So once you have these agreements, and you're going to be negotiating one by one, there are going to be quite a few. Right now, we have incomplete data to actually look at, has it been closed or has it improved in any way? But once it's done, how do we keep on tracking this data? If the First Nations are going to be sole responsible for the management of the programs, be it in education, health, culture, all the other factors that you actually did say should be taken into account, how do we do that?
And I think that is, you know, a significant complexity because Let's remember, at least with provinces, while they receive significant money from the federal government, most of them also have revenue generating capacity. Okay, whereas for the First Nations, whether they have, how much revenue generating capacity they would have would be very different from one First Nation to another First Nation. But I think it really does come down to that question of responsibility. And I think the federal government's aim in this shouldn't be to try to push responsibility to the First Nations. It should be, what responsibility do the First Nations want to take on and what can they take on? And then you need to have an agreement that reflects that. If you could have a situation where a First Nation said, if we have this funding formula, we are going to be 100% responsible for the socioeconomic situation of all of the people on our reserve, and if anything goes wrong, that's on us, then you can work with that type of an arrangement. But you need to be very clear what it is, and it's not going to be the same in every case. There are going to be very many cases where the First Nations will say, yes, we will do some delivery, but maybe we don't have all of the capacity to to prepare the programs or whatever, whatever help we might need. And in that case, there may need to be more reporting back to the federal government in terms of, okay, here's the money you provided, here's what you were supposed to do, have you done it? And I think it's going to be different. But I think, to me, what's fundamental in that question is the question of responsibility. Who is responsible for education, not delivering education, but who's going to be responsible for education outcomes? Who's going to be responsible for health outcomes? And once that is decided, then you can put in an agreement that reflects that. And if it comes down to the federal government's responsibility is just to pay a certain amount of money based on a funding formula, and then all of the responsibility for outcomes rests with the First Nations, that's fine, but that would, I think, you wouldn't expect to get to that situation in every single case.
Nor right away. Monsieur Tremblay, est-ce que vous avez des...
Mr. Tremblay, do you have any comments to add? I agree.
It's a very significant and important one, and they all have different situation, let's put it that way. There's some remote communities, there's some communities that are close to urban centers, there's some communities that are bigger than others that may have more capacity and so on. We have to take all this into account. I don't think the system that we have in place is great from an accountability perspective. So the status quo is not a good accountability structure. They deliver programs that we develop most of the time, and it's not actually a good way of doing things. So for us, it's part of the discussion is actually to make sure that we agree on who's responsible for what, but we're gonna have to advance at the rhythm that the partner wants to advance on this. That's for sure. And in some cases, it would require regional aspect. In some cases, would be more local. But Paul is doing a lot of work on accountability with AFN, and he may wants to jump in.
Thank you, Deputy. So. As the Deputy said, there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Each First Nation has differing levels of capacity. There are different issues with regards to jurisdiction, with regards to the type of program, whether it's provincial or otherwise, and therefore there is, one has to look at establishing what is the overall principle before we get down to the outcomes. The principle that we are co-developing is the principle of mutual accountability, which was to ensure, at least at a community level, as opposed to a provincial or aggregate level, that chiefs and council are accountable to their community members for the outcomes, for the money that is transferred to them to deliver. And so what it needs is a community approved outcomes framework that responds to the local socioeconomic conditions at play, and for which then they would measure and then report back to the community. And then as a principle of mutual accountability, then we get that document to understand what are the results that have been achieved, and then essentially establish that ongoing dialogue of how we can work together with them to move the needle on their agreed upon targets and outcomes.
Achieved on their expectations, not on whatever expectations the federal government put on them. But the expectations they have agreed on as being the accounting measures. Is
Right.
that? Yeah, okay,
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam McLeod, please. I don't see any other questions.
Thank you. I'm going to continue on this train of thought because I think it's very important. A number of months ago, we unanimously in the House agreed to the Anishinaabe Education Act. And so the legislation passed through. And so, and I can't recall because there was sort of there was the legislation and then there was a number of sort of co-agreements of multi-pages below it. So I'm going to start with the staff from Indigenous Services in terms of, in that legislation, do we no longer have to worry about how they're doing in the way that Mr. Ferguson's indicated? Have we transferred the responsibility for the outcomes and we are strictly responsible for transferring the money under an agreed formula?
Yes and no. And what I mean by that agreement is that the relationship is ongoing. There's not a defined end state, right? It's much like between the federal government and the provincial government. We are a partnership trying to improve overall outcomes for the benefit of the society. So when in the self-government agreements, there are periods of renewal. And that's where we take a take stock exercise in terms of what have been the accomplishments with the monies that have been to date.
Okay, so we don't really know. So when Mr. Ferguson in 5 years from now is looking at, what we've done and where we've gone, will he be, first of all, able to sort of assess what happened within that agreement? And second of all, say, well, you know what, parliamentarians don't have to worry about it because this was transferred. It was sort of a transferred responsibility. Mr. Ferguson, how do you perceive this? Because I think you articulated that.
Well, and again, it would depend on what the legislation, what the agreement says, right? We'd have to go back and look at that. But certainly, we don't look at any, and again, I'm taking it sort of to an extreme. We don't look at what the provinces accomplish from equalization funding or fiscal formula funding or anything like that, right? So that's money that's transferred to the provinces. The provinces have responsibility to the people in their provinces to deliver. Can any of that be set up that way for First Nations? I don't know. But that is sort of at one end of the extreme, and then you have the other end of the extreme, which is, just straight contribution agreements. You hire somebody, you get a bill, you send it to us, we pay for it, and we keep doing that type of thing, right? So it's very much going to be dependent on the relationship that's established.
Okay, so I would be very interested in sort of having just a paragraph or two in terms of that particular agreement and what responsibilities there are for reporting of indicators and where we are on that spectrum of responsibility and accountability. My next area, I think I still have a couple of minutes, just a short time. So things like this education information system, which looks like we spent a lot of money on, and would that have been part of, for example, this agreement in terms of for the Anishinaabe or for in British Columbia? Is this a system that is being used across the country for all these communities, regardless of whether they are?
The self-governing, I know in our system, we do have question around, like those that are self-governing, we do have a question that seems to gather data. So I believe so. I will reconfirm, but I know that I have two questions that is specific to self-governing, whether or not. Definitely for the British Columbia agreement, they will continue to report through the system on the indicators that have been agreed upon in the agreement.
Because for the self-governing, our ability to understand if the model is working, to not have that ability to understand the data is probably
Yes.
an issue.
So I believe they report on their student count, like the information that allows us to track the number of students and the progression, and a few other indicators I believe they report to us as well under the self-governing agreement, but I can reconfirm that to the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good questions. Monsieur Massé for the final question, and I have one coming from the analysts.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, de me donner l'occasion.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Tremblay, in terms of your management team, how many executives do you have? We'll see what happens at the department because negotiations and discussions are still underway. I have a deputy minister that works on health and education, 2 deputies, one for the center, another for the region. Deputy assistant ministers, there's 4 or 5. We also have director generals. I imagine that you're going to share the discussions we had today with your executives. Yes? Great. I've said this because it's important, and I'd even like to go further. If you haven't already done so, perhaps you could share this report with all your employees. I think many of them have already seen it, but I'd like to make sure that this report has been shared with them. We take this report very seriously and the conclusions very seriously. I'm sure your management team will also do so, but we need to make all employees aware of it as well. They need to be aware of the reality and of the conclusions, which are particularly important and tricky. So I would like, well, when we see each other in a few months for a follow-up on this report, perhaps you could have perhaps even greater support because all your employees will be behind you in this process. Yes, I'll look at your recommendation. Perhaps I'll even send a message to all our employees and send them a copy, and perhaps I'll remind them of the importance we give it. But they do know it's the case, and, well, thank you.
And then you typically, at the end of a meeting, our analysts, our researchers will hand me a question to ask that they may want some information on in regards to us building a report on the study that we've done here today. Now, you spoke to Mr. Christofferson's question when he talked about the education gap and not reporting. And I think Ms. Yip also on the student attendance. But the question that I've been given to you, to our department, is that the Auditor General found that the department did not report results for the most of the performance measures. In particular, its 2014 strategy contained 23 specific measures, but the OAG found that the department never reported on 17 of them. For example, and as Ms. Yip brought up, it did not report on student attendance and First Nation language instruction. But there were 17 of the 23 that were not reported on. Why is that? I think he answered the I don't know to
No.
Mr. Christofferson on the education gap.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some of the other of the 17.
I would suspect that, we can check on our side, but I mean, if the data are not good quality and we don't have all of them, we probably don't report.
Lack of data. All right.
That's
so there's
possible.
your answer. Good. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask the committee to stay, please. Mr. Christofferson has requested about 5 or 10 minutes of committee business. And so I want to thank our guests for attending today. And actually they have been, the moose hide has been handed out in our lobbies. And I see many different ones, maybe not wearing them today, but they're all instructed to be wearing them tomorrow, and they're available in our. But thank you, Mr. Tremblay, for bringing it again and bringing us up on that issue as well. To all of you, thank you. I always typically end by saying if you leave here and feel like you could have answered a certain question a little different way, or you find other information as to, one of the questions that were asked, please feel free to follow up with our analysts or our clerk, and we'll make sure that those answers get into our study and our report. Thank you for your attendance. We'll suspend just for 1 or 2 minutes and allow them the opportunity to take their exit, and then we'll ask those that we go in camera after that.
you.